Hello and greetings to people of the left, transhumanism Facebook group. If you're watching this video on other channels, I'm live streaming to that group. My name is Yohanan Ben Zion, a voice crying out in the wilderness, crying out for technological New Jerusalem. And these are the techno-communism conversations where we focus on not just the building of a humane and sustainable economic system, a reasonable definition for socialism, not just being willing to fight for a humane economic system, a reasonable definition of communism, but the using of the most powerful revolutionary weapon in history, bar none, by far, advanced computing, to build a humane and sustainable economic system in the 5 years that we have left before runaway overheating from capitalism's climate apocalypse, the U.S. being the chief culprit there, causes an unsustainable situation for multicellular life on Earth. Runaway overheating is very, very close, a second away in geologic terms from completely uh, causing the complete extinction of humankind. It's true that a couple of people might have circular um, um, shelters built, like that built by Mark Zuckerberg, cut above the usual underground habitat, that could survive in this situation for some hundreds of years. So it's very possible that rather than the total loss of human life, a few people would survive in that situation. But I don't think, no matter how good of an engineer you are, the planet Earth, in a rather rapid way, being converted to, for all intents and purposes, something more like the planet Venus, a place that does not sustain multicellular life. That no matter what kind of engineer you might be, I don't think that you have it within your power to build a thing that can sustain that transition. Um, um, these circular habitats are not going to be able to um, withstand the kinds of changes this planet is going to go through. And it's no one has a crystal ball, but every credible climate scientist says that we have already breached the points where a climate scientist said we would have to stop short to see that humanity would not suffer a multi-billion person loss of life. So, by some people's estimation, you are already the walking dead. By other estimations, we have till roughly 2029 to change things, which does not mean some kind of Manichean battle between the forces of good and evil, although the capitalist, the holders of private wealth, are absolutely that evil, and the people willing to fight against them are absolutely that good. But to contextualize it in this way is to overlook the thing which actually must be done, which is to transform, totally transform the industrial bases of this world, particularly the dominant global north. That is abolishing military sectors, most particularly the world's worst polluter, the United States military industrial complex, whose only job is protecting other super polluters, abolishing fossil fuels sectors across the boards to the degree that it is possible to do so without causing massive supply chain collapses, which is still most getting rid of most fossil fuels, and then also getting rid of this luxury product of livestock systems provided to the global north at the expense of the rest of the world by one estimation, 51% by a study. 51% of the cause of human activity causing climate crisis comes from livestock systems. I would tend to reject that analysis because it's divorced from the problem of empire, the world's worst polluter. Whether that number is 49%, 50%, 51%, the world's worst polluter and consumer of fossil fuels, the military industrial complex of the United States, protecting all other super polluters, is really the problem there. But nevertheless, it's not a sustainable system if we don't remove the livestock systems and replace them with products that are sustainable, which are facsimiles of um, um, the livestock products. I eat them all the time. You can buy oat milk that tastes the same as milk. You can buy cheese that tastes the same as cheese. You can buy eggs that taste the same as eggs. You can buy hamburgers that taste the same as hamburgers. You can buy chicken nuggets that taste the same as chicken nuggets. And every time you say, I don't like that, what you're really saying is, I prefer the death of billions over a distinction without a difference. And those are the words of a fascist. And yet, I I talk to a lot of socialists. I've talked to very few who don't say that. Who don't say, "Oh, I can't stop eating. I can't stop eating cheese." Oh, really? You're a communist. You do anything to save planet Earth, to save humankind from oblivion, but you can't stop eating cheese. this overwhelmingly, when people come in contact with problems to do with the climate crisis, you see these category mistakes, and I don't know what you can attribute them, except I've been guilty of this 1,000 times myself. But I still don't understand why people do this. Bourgeois propaganda is very powerful. Um, so I see this headline over and over. Um, that's alluded to in the title of this video, and the idea is that we are reaching a point where the AI hype and the reality of these sectors have diverged. And this headline amuses me because um, the um, at no point. Um, Let me see if I can pull up the headline here. I'm having some minor connectivity issue. I started the stream and it got cut off, and it didn't even post to the group, which is fine because it didn't come around to this headline anyway. Um, AI is hitting a wall just as the hype around it reaches the stratosphere. This is a headline of a similar kind that I've seen quite a few times in recent days. If you follow tech feeds, you've seen it as well. But you notice that they don't say um, that the AI is the AI hype is actually producing something, right? It's just a hype. Uh, these tech sectors are of interest to people, but there is at no point some a discernible benefit to humankind. And when you talk to AI obsessives, they're pretty open about this, right? They say, well, artificial general intelligence or artificial superintelligence is very likely to transform sectors to such a degree that it could become an existential risk, which is a very a fuzzy logic if you don't really break that down, which I can. Um, but So the point being that we might see um, advanced computing causing the death of humankind, or we might see a marginal benefit to humankind, not amounting to the transformation of the material conditions of the billions of people who live in misery. So it might benefit people who are already doing quite well ever so slightly, or it might kill everyone. Those are the two. Those are the two situations described by technologists and technophiles there. Um, and so AI hype. I guess I'll recommend a book called AI Snake Oil, which is based on a series of writings on the subject. I read it recently, but I'm not looking at the authors' names, um, and I don't remember the names. Um, the both maybe people of Indian descent, um, or from that part of the world, and I can't remember the names. I apologize. I can look it up in a second. But AI Snake Oil is a pretty easy title to remember, so you'd be able to find that quite easily. That's a pretty good book. It's not written from the cybernetic communist perspective, but it is critical of these things in ways that are coherent enough, in spite of not being written by cybernetic communists. Um, so this um, uh, set of scenarios described by technologists and technophiles of either an AI takeoff causing some effects more along the lines of an AOL Time Warner merger than a technological singularity. That's to say, just making the rich richer and not making anyone else's life better, or contributing quite palpably, which I think is a real possibility, to the extinction of humankind. Neither of those two scenarios is that good. And so, if you think of one word when you think of the word AI, it should be AI snake oil, or AI hype, or techno-fascism, a word that I generally use to describe almost every technologist or technophile that you've ever heard of or are apt to meet. These are really techno-fascists pretending to be something that they're not. But and so I say, I thanked the people of left transhumanism, but there is no leftism, right? As I said at the top of the show, there is the building of a humane and sustainable economic system, the necessity for building a humane and sustainable world, which is the action of legitimate socialists. Let's say the line between illegitimate and legitimate socialists would be someone like Salvador Allende, who was understanding that advanced computing is the most powerful revolutionary weapon in history, but was also a head of state who was elected and believed to his great detriment in that electoral process, but nevertheless had the ideas otherwise of a Marxist. So this was a legitimate socialist, but not a communist. The communist is people who are willing to fight for this, which is a necessity. It's not negotiable. But by and large, people in this group, I suspect, not knowing all of you, I suspect that you would be people who would not accept those definitions, and people who would tend to accept that leftism is just kind of more of a vibe of wanting good things to happen, which is not what leftism is. That's what liberalism is. And so this is, I only bring that up. It's always valid to say that to people. Don't be a piece of shit liberal. Be willing to actually do the things that would bring about these things, these outcomes that you're describing. Hopefully, I'm still live here. Okay. But I bring it up in this context because I'm going to recommend some books that I read recently. One by, I believe, a man named Peter Fraze called Four Futures, and some that I read some weeks or months back, all to do with cybernetic communism, and more on point. Each one of them would be more on point with the concepts essential to building a humane and sustainable economic system in these 5 years that we have left before runaway overheating, using advanced computing the most powerful revolutionary weapon in history, bar none. And this um, um, you can. I'm not going to give you a link to AI snake oil, even though I guess I can kind of recommend it if you already have a solid interest in AI. But by and large, people who have this fascination with advanced computing don't have these fundamentals of understanding what I said about socialism and communism and the need for transforming the industrial bases before this ticking time bomb explodes, causing extinction of humankind. Um, People are in denial about this. I don't understand exactly why so many people are in denial about this. Um, but but I will give links to audiobook links for all of the other books that I will recommend because they are more consistent with this idea that we must fight to build a humane and sustainable economic system, a necessity of a humane and sustainable world, a point lost on an awful lot of people that call themselves left, um, and um, and consistent with the ideas, generally pretty consistent with the idea that advanced computing is the most powerful revolutionary weapon. There's been tremendous amount of books written that are pretty easy to find on the need for building a humane and sustainable economic system. Even in this world of Mark Fisher's capitalist realism, where those ideas are tending to be disregarded in the ways that I described, probably by people in this group, by not accepting that sort of demarcation that I described between the legitimate socialist, um, uh, the like Allende. You're not Salvador Allende, right? You might say, "Oh, I'm going to reform the system as Salvador Allende did," but you're not fucking Salvador Allende, right? The guy was an actual head of state. You're just a fucking jerk in a little group, all right? So the only thing that would allow you to become like Salvador Allende would be the willingness to create that formation, fight with your comrades for a humane and sustainable economic system. The idea that you're going to somehow work within these fascistic systems that are killing the planet to stop fascists from killing the planet, somehow employing financial capital to that end, the thing that is overwhelmingly the cause of that, it, you shouldn't even be able to say that with a straight face. But you can't find people who won't say that. You really can't. I would just literally point to people who call themselves communists, fully automated luxury communists, who accept none of what I've just said. And some of them, for some reason, are talking about AI as having human rights. Right? Human beings don't even have fucking human rights. There's a billion plus people on this planet who never have, for their whole life, never have sufficient potable water. That's to say, there's not any number of days passing where they're having suitable water to drink. A billion people who don't have that, or proper food or housing. A billion plus people who live their lives, which are cut dramatically short by not having those things, in utter misery. You're talking about systems and machines, and treating them as human beings. We don't even treat human beings as human beings, for God's sake. A person who is even writing about such things pretty obviously falls into the category of that crypto-fascistic techno-fascist, in my opinion. Um, and we've the next thing, if we treat all human beings like human beings, there are also about 100 species who are demonstrably sentient, not demonstrably sapient, but we don't know. There's creatures, for all we know, that have more going on than human beings on some level, right? I think that's a reasonable thing to say when you look at the fact that there are creatures that have relatively simplistic brains, but nevertheless are doing things that we don't understand, hive mind phenomena and stuff. So there's clearly things going on with creatures that we haven't quite wrapped our heads around yet. And that phenomena could be so considerable that we could say that there are forms of sapience that we haven't wrapped our heads around yet. But irrespective of that, there are sentient creatures in great number that have been more or less proven to be sentient, that we do not afford those rights, that we would afford by the transhumanist agenda, that we would afford a system, a tool, because it can approximate certain features of humankind. That's insane. That's utterly fucking insane. That we would prioritize that over other living things, and and it's far worse than that because we don't just fail to um, recognize them, fail to help them. Right? There's some creatures that we could uplift, but we're not uplifting. Right? That's not the problem. Right? The problem is the livestock system and things of this kind kill trillions of living creatures, almost all we would describe as sentient, so that humans can have a luxury product that they don't need. And those same people, while they're stuffing a beef hamburger in their mouth, we'll talk about how the next order of business should be that we treat a chatbot, which is absolutely not a living thing, as if it were a living thing. You've met some stupid fucking people in your life, but I guarantee you've not met people as stupid as fucking transhumanists. It's an incoherent worldview. But the only reason I would post to a group like this or talk to people like this is in the hopes of maybe pushing them a little bit closer to the cybernetic communist way of thinking. The Well, I was going to drill down more on what this AI hitting a wall means. It sounds like a CIA talking point to me because AI, the building of a people's superintelligence, need not hit a wall at all. We are approaching things like open source large language models that are agentic enough to be built into novel formations, not wholly dissimilar from those poorly understood animal world phenomena that I described, the hive minds. We can build what I've often described as a proxy hive mind, but it's better to talk about it in terms of what it would actually do, which is an open source large language model workgroup that serves as a workforce multiplier, so that no individual human being or large language model or large language model formations in that network are super intelligent, but the thing itself is super intelligent. So we can build a people superintelligence in 2025. I don't even think that's a controversial statement. But the technophiles, the tech culture, and the technologists themselves, who are much more likely to be using CIA talking points, just get an email telling them what to say from the worst people that ever lived, than just the kind of casual technophile. The Those people have a very specific interest in seeing that no superintelligence is built except for a thing that is agreeable to financial capital and empire. And that is not superintelligence at all. That is superpowered super stupidity, which is only going to hasten the demise of the species. And that is what technologists are doing. That is what Ray Kurzweil is doing. That is what all of the people who are worse than Ray Kurzweil, which is every other high-profile technologist, that's what all of them are doing. Um, um, I mean, that's not true. There are high-profile technologists who are better than Ray Kurzweil in many things. There are people who are less ambivalent to imperial violence, For example, people who are slightly less ambivalent to the Gaza genocide than Ray Kurzweil would be, but not very many. If you want to have a good laugh, ask any chatbot that you have access to give you a nice long list of U.S. technologists who oppose the Gaza genocide. There's nobody. There's nobody. These are all techno-fascists pretending to be something that they're not. Um, and you know, you see these people wringing their hands about. I just looked in this chat of this group. People wringing their hands about Trump being elected. It's an instant replay of what was happening in November of 2016. And people are saying the same dumb liberal bullshit, not recognizing that the only way to build a humane, sustainable world is to be willing to fight for that, and thus being communists. But nevertheless, bemoaning symptoms of problems that they've caused, you as a liberal are to some degree upholding. You as a capitalist sympathizer are to some degree upholding. Nevertheless, you say, I want to fix this, but you're not willing to do the things that would actually fix it. And but AI, it might not just be pure lies that AI is hitting a wall. Um, um, it's absolutely not just pure lies, in fact. Um, um, but um, a lot of what is said there is some effort at micromanaging these sectors. Um, I mentioned Salvador Allende, right? Why did I say that Salvador Allende is a better cyberneticist than you are, as a person who has maybe a pretty rich understanding of systems theory relative to what cyberneticists of the 70s had? Um, because Salvador Allende was building a technological planned economy, a thing that would have led to a people's superintelligence in short order. I'm quite convinced that this thing that we would call real superintelligence or real technological singularity could have occurred around the year 2010, were it not for the fascist United States destroying efforts to build a people's superintelligence, like destroying the Chilean government of Allende, because that technological planned economy, as rudimentary as it was relative to some things, not really though, right? Because we have better AI than Salvador Allende did, but we're using it in dramatically worse ways. So no, people in glass houses should not be throwing stones. Um, but that thing, building a technological planned economy, would have inspired the world in the way that the first foray into scientific socialism, the USSR, inspired the world to build public health services and housing authorities where they wouldn't have built them. The much of the world that has even the UK, for example, had a more or less fully realized by the standards of lowest level state socialism, National Health Service. They have rolled that back to some degree because of the influence of this fascist realist, capitalist realist phenomena, the neoliberal mandates of the fascist United States putting pressure on them, and so forth. They have weakened their national health service, and thousands of people died as a direct result of those actions. Um, and 100,000 people a year die in the United States because of this death care system. And So this was a thing that changed to a high degree because of the belief in the need to build the lowest level of state socialism, and then move to the next level of state socialism and keep moving up. That was sabotaged by the forces of elitism, empire, and financial capital. Um, and just as the building of a technological planned economy, a thing that would have accelerated that move to higher forms of socialism, was sabotaged, just as the Soviet Union itself, which, if it had been allowed to exist in the era of networked computing, which it really was not, um, would have necessarily, I think, by the nature of it continuing to exist, built this something more like a technological planned economy as well. There were already plans. They weren't as advanced as the Cybersyn project of Allende, but there were already plans on the books for many decades to also build a technological planned economy in the Soviet Union. Um, um, uh, so the people upholding the system most responsible for the destruction of the people's superintelligence are not the people actually building superintelligence. These sectors have been captured by fascists in the interest of sabotaging superintelligence. And almost everything that you would point to as tech would more correctly be described as that. Tech may, for as far as the United States and the West is concerned, tech should be viewed as a shortened form of techno-fascism. um, and so you can't even have a conversation about whether AI is hitting a wall or not when you're looking at such grotesquely bad fundamentals in your definitions. Um, and um, um, I had a little more to say along these lines, but the point is that we can build a people's superintelligence in this time frame before 2029 if we start building it now in 2025 and it grows to a great size and scale in a short time. That is not the number of people that would be required, a smaller number than what would be required to have revolution by the standards of the state socialism, converting one nation into the state socialist form. But I think that generally it's held, and studies would back this up, that as few as 3% of the people in a given country will see can see that revolutionary outcome if they're correctly organized. But I don't think, in the face of this capitalist realist phenomena, this omnicidal military-industrial complex phenomena, the brainwashing of people, that we can count on even 3% of people pulling their heads out of their asses in the ways that would be an organizing. You have to not just be aware, but organized. And So this is why I focused on this thing, the people's superintelligence, not really born out of an interest in advanced technology, so much as born out of an interest of not fucking dying. And the We can build this people's superintelligence, which I think many technologists who have a richer understanding of computer science than I do will push back at this and say machine learning is by no means, even today, the highest form of advanced computing. That there are other subfields here that warrant consideration, but these other subfields have not emerged with something like a large language model agent that is open source, that can be downloaded right now and modified into the open source large language model workgroup as workforce multiplier, which, even if it's only um, 30% as agentic as we would like it to be, for it to be approximating human spearheading of projects, we can still use it as a workforce multiplier in that work group formation. Rather than give the more in-depth analysis of the hitting of the wall relative to the people's superintelligence, I am going to end this and say that we must build this thing, the people's superintelligence, in this form. I would ask you, if you are a person that has some relationship to the work of advanced computing, to find a way to work with others to build this thing, and myself, if you find useful to do so, feel free to reach out to me. I've tended to be more of an agitation propagandist than a builder of things, and I don't take that as a fault to the degree that others might, because in this world so overwhelmed by fascistic forces, the raising of consciousness in these areas is important work. It's not rewarded in the way that other work is rewarded, but it is nevertheless not inferior work. At such time when the world is quite uniformly cybernetic communist in their thinking, it becomes less so. Or even at such time when you're in a position to outpace these omnicidal forces, it might become less so. But we're not there. So I consider this agitation propaganda to be good work. Um, well, I have more notes on this idea of AI hitting a wall versus the people's superintelligence. I'm going to end this and continue that on another conversation. Thank you.